The encounter extended. Ethan's ship shuddered violently as it entered the atmosphere of the uncharted planet. Alarms blared and the control panel flashed red. "Come on, hold together," he muttered, gripping the steering wheel tightly. The ship was losing altitude fast, and the dense jungle below seemed to stretch endlessly. With a final burst of effort, Ethan managed to steer the ship toward a clearing. The impact was brutal, throwing him against the console. When he came to, the ship was in ruins, and the air was thick with the scent of alien vegetation. He stumbled out of the wreckage, his body aching but intact. The planet was unlike anything he had ever seen. Towering trees with bioluminescent leaves cast an eerie glow, and strange creatures chirped in the distance. Ethan activated his wrist scanner, but the readings were erratic. "Great," he muttered. "No signal, no supplies, and no idea where I am." As he explored the area, he noticed movement in the shadows. His hand instinctively went to his blaster, but before he could draw it, a figure emerged from the foliage. She was unlike any alien he had encountered before. Her skin shimmered with a silvery hue, and her eyes glowed with an otherworldly light. She wore a sleek, form-fitting suit that accentuated her graceful movements. "You are injured," she said, her voice melodic yet commanding. Ethan blinked in surprise. "You speak English." "I have studied your species," she replied, stepping closer. "My name is Zara. You are on Zorath, a planet far from your home. Come, I will help you." Zara led him to a hidden sanctuary, a dome-shaped structure nestled among the trees. Inside, the air was cool and filled with the hum of advanced technology. She tended to his wounds with a gentle touch, her fingers brushing against his skin in a way that sent shivers down his spine. "Why are you helping me?" Ethan asked, his voice tinged with suspicion. "Because you are unique," Zara replied, her gaze locking with his. "My people have long sought to understand humans, your resilience, your emotions. They fascinate me." As the days passed, Ethan learned more about Zara and her world. She was a scientist, one of the few who believed in the potential of hybrid offspring. "Our species is dying," she confessed one evening as they sat beneath the glowing trees. "We have lost the ability to reproduce naturally, but with your DNA, we could create something new, a child that is both human and Zorathian." Ethan was stunned. "You're talking about creating a hybrid with me." Zara nodded, her expression serious. "It is not a decision to be made lightly, but I believe you are the key to our survival, and perhaps to something more." Ethan felt a mix of emotions, fear, curiosity, and something deeper. Zara's presence was intoxicating, and he found himself drawn to her in ways he couldn't explain. "What about you?" he asked softly. "What do you want?" Zara hesitated, then placed her hand on his. "I want to explore this connection between us, to see where it leads." Their eyes met, and in that moment, Ethan felt a spark of something extraordinary. It was the beginning of a journey that would change both their lives forever. Ethan woke to the soft hum of Zara's sanctuary, the air filled with the faint scent of alien flowers. And as he sat up, he noticed her standing by a large, translucent screen, her fingers dancing across its surface as data streams flowed like liquid light. "Good morning," she said without turning around, her voice calm and melodic. "How do you feel?" Ethan replied, "Better, thanks to you," his voice still rough from sleep, and Zara turned to face him, her luminous eyes studying him with a mix of curiosity and something deeper. "You are adapting well to our environment," she noted. "Most humans would struggle with the atmospheric differences," and Ethan shrugged, saying, "I've been to a lot of strange places. You learn to adapt," as Zara nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "That is one of the things I admire about your species, your resilience," she said, and Ethan stood, feeling a bit unsteady but determined to show he was fine, asking, "So what's on the agenda today? More tests? Or are you going to show me around this place?" Zara's smile widened as she replied, "Both, but first, I want to show you something important," leading him through a series of corridors, each more fascinating than the last, the walls pulsing with life and the air filled with a soft, melodic hum, until they arrived at a large chamber filled with strange, organic-looking machines, where in the center of the room was a pod, its surface shimmering with a faint blue light. "This," Zara said, gesturing to the pod, "is an artificial womb. It is the key to our survival." And Ethan stepped closer, his eyes wide with wonder, asking, "You're serious about this hybrid idea, aren't you?" To which Zara replied, "Completely. Our species is on the brink of extinction, and we have tried everything to reverse our decline, but nothing has worked. Until now." Her voice filled with conviction, and Ethan turned to her, his expression serious, asking, "And you think I'm the answer?" Zara nodded, saying, "I do. Your DNA, combined with ours, could create a new life form, one that is stronger, more resilient, and capable of thriving in ways we cannot." And Ethan felt a mix of emotions, fear, excitement, and something he couldn't quite name, admitting, "This is a lot to take in. I mean, creating a new life form? That's huge." As Zara placed a hand on his arm, her touch sending a jolt of electricity through him, saying, "I understand your hesitation, but I believe this is the right path for both of us." And Ethan looked into her eyes, seeing the determination and hope shining there, asking softly, "What about you? What do you want?" Zara hesitated, then stepped closer, saying, "I want to explore this connection between us, to see where it leads." And their eyes met, sparking something extraordinary, the beginning of a journey that would change both their lives forever. The conflict. Ethan and Zara spent the next few days exploring the planet together, their bond growing stronger with each passing moment. Zara showed him the wonders of Zorath, the bioluminescent forests, the crystal-clear lakes that glowed with an inner light, and the ancient ruins that hinted at a civilization far older and more advanced than anything Ethan had ever seen. As they walked through the dense jungle, Zara explained more about her people and their struggles. "We were once a thriving species," she said, her voice tinged with sadness. "But over time, our ability to reproduce naturally faded. We tried everything, genetic modifications, cloning, even merging with other species, but nothing worked. The artificial womb is our last hope." Ethan listened intently, his mind racing with questions. "But why me?" he asked, stopping to look at her. "Why do you think my DNA is the key?" Zara turned to face him, her luminous eyes filled with a mix of hope and determination. "Your species is unique," she said. "Humans have an incredible capacity for adaptation and resilience. Your DNA carries traits that could complement ours, creating a hybrid that is stronger and more versatile than either of us alone. And there's something else." She hesitated, then continued, "I have studied humans for a long time, and I have come to believe that your emotions, your ability to love, to connect deeply with others, are what make you truly special. I want our child to have that." Ethan felt a surge of emotion at her words. "You really believe in this, don't you?" he asked softly. "I do," Zara replied, her voice steady, "and I believe in us." As they continued their journey, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The jungle, though beautiful, had an eerie stillness to it, as if the very air was holding its breath. "Do you feel that?" he asked, his hand instinctively going to the blaster at his side. Zara nodded, her expression tense. "We are not alone," she said quietly. "We should return to the sanctuary." But before they could move, a group of figures emerged from the shadows, surrounding them. They were Zorathians, but unlike Zara, their eyes were cold and their expressions hostile. At the front of the group stood a tall, imposing figure with dark, metallic skin and glowing red eyes. "Korvax," Zara whispered, her voice filled with both fear and defiance. "Zara," Korvax said, his voice deep and menacing. "You have been consorting with the human. This is forbidden." "I am not bound by your laws, Korvax," Zara replied, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "I am a scientist, and I will do what I must to save our species." Korvax's eyes narrowed. "Your experiments are an abomination," he spat. "Mixing our DNA with that of a primitive species, it is an insult to everything we stand for." Ethan stepped forward, his hand still on his blaster. "Hey, I'm standing right here," he said, his voice firm, "and I don't appreciate being called primitive." Korvax turned his gaze to Ethan, his expression one of pure disdain. "You are nothing but a tool," he said. "A means to an end, and once we are done with you, you will be discarded." Ethan felt a surge of anger, but before he could respond, Zara stepped between them. "Enough, Korvax," she said, her voice commanding. "You have no authority over me or my work. Leave us be." Korvax's eyes flashed with anger, but he did not move. "You are making a grave mistake, Zara," he said. If you continue down this path, you will bring ruin to us all. With that, he turned and disappeared into the jungle, his followers close behind. Ethan let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. "That guy's a real charmer," he said, trying to lighten the mood. Zara didn't smile. "Korvax is dangerous," she said. "He leads a faction that believes in purity, that our species should remain unchanged, even if it means our extinction. He will stop at nothing to destroy my work and us." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. "What do we do?" he asked. "We continue," Zara replied, her voice filled with determination. "But we must be careful. Korvax will not give up easily." As they made their way back to the sanctuary, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled over him. The encounter with Korvax had made it clear that their journey would not be an easy one. But as he looked at Zara, her silver skin glowing in the dim light of the jungle, he felt a surge of determination. He would stand by her, no matter what. The awakening. The sanctuary's glowing walls hummed with tension. Ethan stood beside Zara in the chamber of the artificial womb, its azure light casting shadows across their faces. The pod pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat, as Zara input the final sequences into the holographic interface. Her silver fingers danced over the controls, merging Ethan's DNA with the genetic archives of her people. The air smelled metallic, charged with energy, and Ethan's skin prickled with anticipation. "It's ready," Zara whispered, her voice trembling with awe. "The fusion is stable. Our child, it's beginning." Ethan stared at the pod, where swirling strands of gold and silver intertwined like celestial threads. A strange warmth bloomed in his chest, pride, fear, wonder. "How long until?" 3 months, Zara said. "The Proximan biotech accelerates growth, but we must protect it. Korvax's followers are already gathering at the borders." The jungle outside the sanctuary had grown hostile. Strange, jagged drones patrolled the skies, their crimson scanners sweeping the terrain. Korvax's faction, the Purifiers, believed hybrid life defiled their species' purity. Zara's allies, a small band of rebel scientists and warriors, prepared defenses. Ethan trained with them, learning to wield Zorathian energy blades and disruptor rifles. Their leader, a scarred warrior named Virin, clapped Ethan's shoulder after a sparring session. "You fight like a cornered Grishnak," he grunted, referencing a local predator. "But you lack patience. Humans rush. That's how they die." Ethan wiped sweat from his brow. "And Zorathians overthink. That's how they die." Virin's lips twitched, the closest thing to a smile his stern face could muster. That night, Zara found Ethan on the sanctuary's highest balcony. The planet's twin moons bathed the jungle in silver, and distant howls echoed through the trees. She pressed against him, her body cool and smooth, her breath warm against his neck. "You're afraid," she said. "Of course I'm afraid," Ethan replied, his hands settling on her waist. "We're outnumbered, Korvax wants us dead, and our kids stuck in a glowing test tube." Zara turned to face him, her luminous eyes searching his. "Fear is human, but so is courage." She kissed him, her lips soft yet demanding, and Ethan's doubts dissolved. Her touch ignited him, a primal electric need that blurred the line between human and alien. They stumbled into her chamber, armor and robes discarded, their bodies entwined in the moonlight. Zara's skin shimmered as Ethan traced the delicate ridges along her spine, and she arched into him with a gasp that sounded like music. For a moment, the war outside ceased to exist. The attack came at dawn. Alarms shattered the sanctuary's calm. Ethan jolted awake, grabbing his disruptor rifle as Zara's voice blared through the comms. "Purifiers at the eastern gate. They've breached the perimeter." He sprinted through chaos. Rebel warriors clashed with Korvax's forces in the halls, energy blades screeching as they tore through metal and flesh. Ethan ducked behind a shattered column, firing at a hulking purifier clad in obsidian armor. The man staggered but didn't fall, his shield absorbing the blast. "Aim for the joints," Virin barked, leaping from a balcony to tackle the purifier. Ethan fired again, striking the armor's weak point at the knee. The purifier collapsed, and Virin silenced him with a blade to the throat. "Where's Zara?" Ethan shouted. "Lab," Virin pointed to a corridor engulfed in smoke. Ethan ran, his heart pounding. The lab's doors were sealed, scorched by plasma fire. He slammed his palm on the access panel. "Zara, open up." Inside, Zara stood protectively in front of the artificial womb, her hands glowing with raw energy. Korvax loomed before her, his crimson eyes blazing. "You disgrace our ancestors," he snarled. "This abomination dies today." "You're too late," Zara hissed. "The child lives, and it will outlive you." Korvax raised a serrated blade. Ethan fired 3 shots to the purifier's back. Korvax whirled, unharmed, his armor deflecting the blasts. "Pathetic human," he spat. "You think your toys can." Zara struck. A bolt of silver energy erupted from her palms, slamming Korvax into the wall. He roared, his armor cracking, and lunged at her. Ethan tackled him midair, and they crashed into a console. Sparks flew as Ethan grappled with the alien, his muscles burning. Korvax's strength was inhuman. Ethan's ribs creaked under the pressure. "Ethan," Zara screamed. With a final surge of adrenaline, Ethan grabbed a shard of broken glass and plunged it into Korvax's neck. The purifier gagged, black blood bubbling from his lips. "You ruin everything," he choked, collapsing. Ethan staggered to his feet, bloodied but alive. Zara rushed to him, her hands glowing as she healed his wounds. "The child," he gasped. She nodded to the pod. Inside, the hybrid's form had grown, a tiny being with Ethan's strong jaw and Zara's shimmering skin. Its eyes, when they flickered open, were pools of starlight. The aftermath. The rebels drove back Korvax's forces, but the victory was bitter. The sanctuary's walls bore scars, and many allies had fallen. That night, Zara and Ethan stood over the artificial womb, their reflections warped in its glowing surface. "We can't stay here," Ethan said. "Korvax's followers will return." Zara rested her head on his shoulder. "There's a place, a hidden valley. The Proximans called it Vihal's Embrace. Their texts say it's where life began." "A fresh start," Ethan murmured. "Yes, but the journey is dangerous. The valley lies beyond the ash wastes, a desert plagued by storms." Ethan kissed her temple. "We'll make it, all 3 of us." Their escape. They left at first light. The rebels provided a hovercraft, a sleek armored vehicle stocked with supplies. Virin clasped Ethan's forearm in farewell. "Keep her alive, human, or I'll skin you myself." "Charming," Ethan muttered. Zara cradled the artificial womb in her arms, its light dimmed to avoid detection. The hovercraft soared over the jungle, leaving the sanctuary's ruins behind. For hours, they flew in silence, the landscape shifting to barren plains of crimson sand. Then the storms hit. The ash wastes lived up to their name. Howling winds slammed into the hovercraft, pelting the hull with razor-sharp debris. Ethan gripped the controls, swerving to avoid jagged rock formations. "We need to land." There, Zara pointed to a cave mouth half buried in the dunes. They crash-landed, the hovercraft's engine sputtering. Ethan dragged Zara and the womb into the cave as the storm raged outside. "How long?" he shouted over the wind. "Days, maybe," Zara replied. They huddled in the dark, the womb's soft glow their only light. Ethan wrapped his arms around Zara, her body trembling, not from cold but fear. "What if we fail?" she whispered. He tilted her chin up. "We won't, because humans are stubborn and you're you." She kissed him, fierce and desperate, her claws digging into his back. Their lovemaking was raw, a rebellion against death itself. Afterward, Zara traced the scars on Ethan's chest, a map of their struggles. "When this is over," she said, "I want to feel the sun with you, on a world where we don't have to hide." Ethan smiled. "Deal." The revelation. Days later, the storm cleared. As they neared Vihal's Embrace, the womb began to glow violently. Zara gasped, her hands hovering over it. "It's happening, the child, it's awakening." The pod's surface rippled like liquid. A small hand pressed against the glass, followed by a face, their child's face. Eyes like galaxies, skin like molten silver, and a faint melodic cry that echoed through the hovercraft. Zara wept, Ethan laughed, tears streaming down his face. "It's perfect," he breathed. But their joy was short-lived. On the horizon, black ships descended, Korvax's fleet rebuilt and vengeful. Zara's eyes hardened. Get us to the valley, now. As Ethan pushed the hovercraft to its limits, the child's cries grew stronger. A sound that was neither human nor Zorathian, but something new. Something unstoppable. The storm of Vihal's embrace. The hovercraft screamed through the crimson skies, its engines straining against the weight of the storm and the relentless pursuit of Korvax's fleet. Ethan gripped the controls, his knuckles white, as Zara cradled the artificial womb in her arms. The child within stirred, its tiny hands pressing against the glass as if sensing the danger outside. "We're not going to make it," Ethan muttered, his eyes darting to the rear display. The black ships were gaining, their plasma cannons glowing ominously. "We have to," Zara said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "The valley is close. If we can reach it, the ancient defenses will protect us." Ethan glanced at her. "Ancient defenses? You didn't mention that earlier." "I didn't think we'd need them," she admitted. "But the texts say Vihal's embrace is guarded by the remnants of the Proximan civilization, if we can activate them." "Big if," Ethan muttered, swerving to avoid a barrage of plasma fire. The hovercraft shuddered, its shields flickering. The valley's edge. The landscape shifted as they approached the valley. The barren dunes gave way to jagged cliffs and towering spires of crystal that glowed faintly in the storm's dim light. Zara leaned forward, her eyes scanning the terrain. "There!" She pointed to a narrow pass between two massive crystal formations. "That's the entrance." Ethan didn't hesitate. He banked sharply, the hovercraft skimming the ground as it shot through the pass. Behind them, Korvax's fleet hesitated, their ships too large to follow. But smaller, more agile fighters broke off, pursuing them into the valley. The interior of Vihal's embrace was breathtaking. The air was thick with the scent of blooming alien flowers, and the ground shimmered with veins of bioluminescent ore. At the center of the valley stood a massive structure, a temple of sorts, its walls covered in intricate carvings that pulsed with light. "Land there," Zara said, pointing to a platform at the temple's base. Ethan brought the hovercraft down with a jolt, the engines sputtering as they died. "We're out of power," he said, his voice tight, "if those defenses don't work." "They will," Zara said, her tone leaving no room for doubt. She grabbed the artificial womb and leapt from the hovercraft, Ethan close behind. The temple's heart. The temple's interior was a maze of glowing corridors and shifting walls. Zara led the way, her knowledge of Proximan architecture guiding them through the labyrinth. Behind them, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed. Korvax's fighters had landed. "Hurry," Ethan urged, his disruptor rifle at the ready. They reached the heart of the temple, a vast chamber filled with towering machines that hummed with latent energy. At the center of the room was a pedestal, its surface covered in glowing runes. "This is it," Zara said, placing the artificial womb on the pedestal. "The child is the key. Its hybrid DNA will activate the defenses." Ethan frowned. "You're using our kid as a battery." "Not a battery," Zara said, her hands moving over the runes. "A catalyst. The Proximans designed this system to protect their descendants. Our child is the first of a new lineage, a bridge between species. It's the only way." The runes flared to life, their light spreading through the chamber. The machines began to hum louder, their energy building to a crescendo. Outside, the valley trembled as the ancient defenses awakened. The battle. Korvax's fighters burst into the chamber, their weapons raised. Ethan fired, taking down two before they could react. Zara stood protectively in front of the pedestal, her hands glowing with energy. "You cannot win," Korvax's voice boomed as he entered the chamber, his armor scorched but intact. "This abomination will die and you with it." "You're too late," Zara said, her voice filled with defiance. "The defenses are active. The valley is no longer yours to claim." Korvax snarled, charging at her. Ethan intercepted him, the two men grappling in a brutal clash of strength and will. Ethan's human resilience met Korvax's alien power, neither willing to yield. Zara turned her attention to the pedestal, her hands moving faster as she activated the final sequence. The machines roared to life, their energy surging through the temple and into the valley. Outside, the crystal spires began to glow, their light forming a barrier that repelled Korvax's fleet. The sacrifice. Ethan and Korvax's fight spilled onto a narrow walkway overlooking a chasm. Below, molten energy churned, its heat searing even from a distance. Ethan's strength was fading, his body battered and bruised. Korvax, sensing weakness, landed a devastating blow that sent Ethan sprawling. "You are nothing," Korvax spat, standing over him. "A primitive creature playing at godhood." Ethan coughed, blood staining his lips. "Maybe, but I'm not the one who's afraid." Korvax's eyes narrowed. "Afraid of you." "Of change," Ethan said, his voice weak but steady. "Of a future you can't control." Korvax raised his blade, but before he could strike, Zara's voice rang out. "Korvax." He turned, just in time to see her unleash a blast of energy that sent him reeling. Ethan seized the moment, tackling Korvax and driving him toward the edge of the walkway. With a final, desperate push, he sent the Purifier leader tumbling into the chasm. Korvax's scream echoed as he fell, swallowed by the molten energy below. The dawn. The temple fell silent, the machines hum fading to a gentle pulse. Zara helped Ethan to his feet, her hands glowing as she healed his wounds. "You're hurt," she said, her voice trembling. "I'll live," Ethan said, his eyes searching hers. "What about the child?" Zara smiled, leading him back to the pedestal. The artificial womb's surface had cleared, revealing their child, a tiny being with Ethan's strong jaw and Zara's shimmering skin. Its eyes, when they flickered open, were pools of starlight. "It's perfect," Ethan whispered, his voice filled with awe. Zara rested her head on his shoulder. "We did it together." The future. As the sun rose over Vihal's embrace, the valley came alive with light and color. The ancient defenses had restored the land, creating a sanctuary where their child could grow and thrive. Ethan and Zara stood on the temple's highest balcony, their child cradled between them. The future was uncertain, but for the first time it felt full of hope. "What do we call it?" Ethan asked, his fingers brushing the child's tiny hand. Zara smiled. "A name that reflects its heritage, a bridge between worlds." Ethan thought for a moment. "How about Elara? It means light of the stars in an old Earth language." Zara's eyes glowed with warmth. "Elara," she repeated, "it's perfect." As they stood together, watching the sunrise, Ethan knew their journey was far from over. But with Zara by his side and Elara in their arms, he felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead.